Tonight we're installing a lolly column just like we have right here. I'm going to reproduce the process and do the same thing over here and show you all the steps to measuring and cutting one to the proper length and installing it. To make sure the lolly column is the perfect length to fit in the opening, after jacking up the house about 1/8 of an inch, we're going to measure the gap with a tape measure and then cut a 2x4 to be the correct length. Then we'll test fit the 2x4 into the opening to make sure that it is the correct length before cutting the lolly column. When you're cutting the 2x4, make sure to take into account the thickness of the cap plates so that the lolly column comes out to be the correct length and fits in. When you're done with the cut of your template, test fit it to make sure it's the correct length. Like that. To make your cut, you're going to need some basic tools. A flat working surface that is good and level, some old scraps of wood and screws to make a jig with, a screwdriver to put the screws in. You're going to need a square, preferably one that's long so you can make nice straight cuts, something to mark the perimeter of the lolly column with where you're going to make your cut, and a reciprocating saw with some metal cutting blades to make the cut with. We use an old framing blade as a backstop against the back of the lolly column while we're rotating it. Hammer and chisel are used to clean up the ends, and of course your safety gear. You also obviously need your template piece to measure how long of a cut you're going to make. Once you've measured the length of your lolly column as closely as you can and squared it up with your jig piece at the end here, you can move on to installing the other parts of the jig, starting with the backstop at the back of the lolly column. Remember to install a blade behind the back of the lolly column to account for the cutting width of the blade that you use to cut the lolly column with. If you've set up your jig correctly, when you rest your marker against the stop right here and draw the line as you rotate the column, you'll end in exactly the same place that you started. The next step is to set up your reciprocating saw with a metal cutting blade and position it against the stop on the line, and then begin cutting until you see cement dust coming out of the kerf from the cut. This indicates that you've cut entirely through the metal jacket. Then someone needs to rotate the column to make it a little bit easier to cut this continuously. You want to rotate the column against the stop to ensure a nice straight cut. In our case, this is counterclockwise. When you're done, your cut should look like this, and your bones should be itching from using the reciprocating saw, and all your teeth should be shattered out of your head. And then you can just pull it out a little bit and hold on to it firmly, tap it until it breaks free. Like that. Next step is to put on your safety glasses and clean up the end so that it's nice and square with your hammer and chisel. Now we're ready to see if it fits. After lots of hammering and swearing, the final step is to level it the best you can. Great. Now we can take out the screw jacks. When you're all done, it should be good and solid so that it doesn't move and you can't twist it at all, indicating that it's bearing weight. And that's what I call sweat equity.